So for today, we'll be looking at QGIS. We'll be looking at the basic mapping for survey sites, for your thesis proposals, or for your future scientific and research publications, or any work that you might be doing. So QGIS is an open source software, so it's free to download. There's no need to pay. And it's a very powerful mapping or a GIS software that you can use. So once you open up QGIS, you'll be greeted with this interface, and this is going to be our work area. So you on this side here, you have the browser, and if you are an advanced user of QGIS, you'll be able to put some of the elements that you can use here. And on the lower left panel, or the lower panel, just below the browser, is the layers panel. If you are familiar with Photoshop or any image editing software like Photoshop or Affinity, you'll be familiar with how layers work. And this is pretty much the same thing here. And over here, this is the processing toolbar or toolbox where the features of QGIS will be readily available for you to search or to browse through instead of looking for them here in the tool bar, in the menu bar over on top. So now we'll be looking at we'll be making a new project. So QGIS automatically gives you this option of making a new project. You can click on it, and it's going to give you a blank work area. Now, so this is your work area here. So this is going to be where your map will appear, or your the layers that you will put in QGIS would appear. So right now it's completely blank because we haven't put any data into it, or any elements or layers into it. So you have a variety of options. You can download the layers online as shape files, or you can get them in QGIS itself through a plugin. So the first thing we're gonna do is install a plugin. So you have to click here in the plugins tab and click manage and install plugins. So it'll give you this pop-up window where it'll ask you to search for the specific plugin that you are looking for. The one we are looking for is Quick Map Services. As you can see here, I already installed mine because I always use this one. But in your case, you can easily install it by clicking the install button right here, where the reinstalled plugin should be. Once you have installed the plugin, you can now close this and go back to your work area. So now we are going to put the base layer or the map proper into our work area. So to do this, we click on web, and you'll see that the Quick Map Services will be available here. And now from here, you have a selection of base maps that you can use. Some of them are readily available, and some are might need some tweaking in the coding. I am not sure because I haven't really explored it, but I normally use this, the OSM standard. And once you click it, it'll give you the world map right here. Now you have to understand that using this plugin, the Quick Map Services, is heavily reliant on internet connection. So if you have a slow internet connection, the rendering for your map might take a while, especially if you are trying to zoom in. Now we are going to zoom in. And as you notice, for each level of that we zoomed in, the map changes correspondingly with territorial areas and labels that will pop up. So I'd like to make a map for Dumaguete. So I'm just gonna keep on zooming in. There. And now we have a base layer for our map. So this will be our working map or our working image. From here, you can actually add a few more details to your map, like labels or points where you want to do your surveys, or if you have the exact GPS coordinates, that would be better to plug it in here by just opening it. But if you don't have GPS coordinate, we can actually just make an estimate of where you want your sites to be. So in this case, let's say we want our surveys to be conducted here in front of IAMS. So we'll be placing a few points or markers right here by the airport runway, and somewhere in the middle of Suleiman Beach, and somewhere along the seawall, or right in front of the seawall. So to do this, we go to layers, and we create a layer. So create layer, and we click the new shapefile layer. This will give you a dialog where it's going to ask you for the file name, the file encoding, the geometry, and other elements. So for now, we don't really want to change any of these, and we want the geometry to be a point because we are only marking certain areas or certain points in the map. So now we want to add a file name for future reference and for future use. You can type in the file name that you want, but it's going to be saved into the directory of QGIS, and it might be difficult for you to look for those elements in the future. So what I like to do is click here on the three dots, which is the browse option, and make my own directory or my own folder for my shape files. It is important to keep your files organized when doing mapping, because you'll be dealing with lots of variables and lots of layers when doing maps, and making sure that everything is organized would be helpful for your projects or for your mapping efforts in the future. So sample maps. So I'm gonna label this sample map 1. Save. Okay, now I have the directory here. The coding is UTF-8, which means that it's readable by QGIS, and you can open it in other mapping softwares also. And you click OK. So now it really won't do anything. Now we have to put in the points ourselves. To do this, we click on the layer, the sample map layer, and we click the pencil here, the pencil icon, which says toggle editing. There. Now we have enabled this layer to be edited within QGIS, and now we want to put points. So beside the disk or the save layer edits is the add point feature. So we click on this, and the cursor will now become a crosshair, and we now can create points anywhere on our map. So again, I want to put it somewhere here beside the runway, and it's going to ask you for an ID. So this will be the labels. So site site 1, okay. Then somewhere in the middle, 2, and here 3. Okay, so now we have these points. So we can put labels later in the processing. So now we have produced a map that we'll be able to use. Again, as I mentioned earlier, you can actually plug in the points that you got from GPS units, from the actual GPS units, or from your cell phones. If you have downloaded a GPS app or software onto your mobile phones, you can definitely do that. So now that we have our base layer and the points that we want to work, the points that we that that I want to make, that I want to survey, now we proceed to making the proper map. So we go to project here in the menu toolbar, and we click the new print layout. It's going to ask you for the file name or the title of your print layout. So again, I'm going with sample map. And okay. Now it's going to open a new window where you can actually work on the map proper. Enlarge this a little bit. Okay. So don't be intimidated. This is actually a very simple interface. So the first thing that you want to do is click this icon here, the paper icon, where it's going to it's labeled add map. If you hover your cursor onto it, click this, and you click anywhere on the white workspace, click and drag, and now you'll be able to produce the map. See? So this was the working map that we had earlier, which is this one. And now it is copied on this workspace here, or work area over here. So you have to note that any changes that you do in the main QGIS window will be reflected in the print layout window. So you have to be careful, especially when dealing with multiple layers or multiple labels or any elements in your main QGIS window. You have to be careful as to not disrupt or destroy the formatting that you have here. Okay, so now we have added our map. So we have the points here and the base map. So that is the runway and such. Next is we add the scale bar. So just look for this icon here, the black and white line. Click on it and click anywhere on the map. You can click or click and drag, but clicking on the map will just suffice. And it's going to ask you for the properties of your scale bar. Just click OK, and there you have it. You can resize this to make sure that it's a little bit organized, and there you go. So you have a scale bar over here. The next element that you want to add to your map is a compass. So a compass, so you just click the add north arrow symbol on the toolbar, and you make a small square here, and now it's going to give you an arrow pointing to the north, and you can put it anywhere on the map. So I prefer it on the upper right corner, and you can resize it to make sure that it's neat. So now we have our base map, the working map that we have, the working map that we want, the north arrow and the scale bar. So now you can actually edit these two elements by clicking on them and looking at the item properties on this panel here. So on the north, you can actually change the colors of your icon by clicking this one, select the fill color, and it's going to change into red or white or blue. So you can choose any color. I want to keep it simple, so I'm going to choose white or the default. And you can change the black, the strokes, or the outline by changing the colors here, the stroke color. Next is, if you click on the scale bar here, you can change some of the properties of your scale bar. One useful element in particular are the segments. As you notice, there are only 2 segments here. You can actually add one more or reduce the number of segments that you have on your scale bar. So 2 would suffice, and you can play around with this. You can add colors, change the font with the item properties here. So the scale bar unit is always in meters. You can change it into kilometers, and it'll automatically change the values also. So since we are only dealing with a value smaller than a kilometer, we're gonna stick with meters. Okay. So now we want to add labels to our the points, our survey points. So we can use the add text or add label function by clicking on the toolbar and just dragging it onto the map. So you cannot edit the text here in the map itself. You have to go to the item properties to change that. So it already has a placeholder there, so you can just change it, delete, and site 1, and it automatically reflects here. You can change the font here, and change 11. You can choose the font, the style, and the size, and click OK. And you do the same for the rest of your waypoints or markers. Site 2, then click again, site 3. Okay, so there you have it. One feature also with the map is with the base map or the map that the working map in the work area is you can actually move the map around the internal map. So you can change the positioning of the map itself without moving the actual image. You do this by clicking this, move item contents. So it's going to move the contents of the image, so the map itself. You can click it and click on the icon and just click and drag around, and it's going to change your map, the contents of your map, without actually moving the entire frame. So this is actually useful, especially when you're dealing with, or you made the mistake of making a map or adding a map, or when you click add map here and it doesn't reflect the actual site that you want to be working on. So there. Okay, so now we have compass, the labels, and the scale bar. Next is we want to add the legend. So if ever you're going to be dealing with some parts of your map where you want to have a legend, this is a very useful option. So you just click and drag, making a small square, since we only have a few elements here and there. Again, you change the contents of your items in the properties. So legend map 1, and we want to change this here. You can unclick the auto update, so you'll be able to make the changes here. So unclick, then you double click on the item or the entry that you want to change. So going to change the label, so samplings find here, do get there, or you can just remove it by clicking the minus icon here. So there, it's a very simple legend. You can place it anywhere on the map, here or here. Again, with the item properties, you can actually remove or manipulate your legend. So I don't like having a background, so I just uncheck this, and there we go. Now the box is transparent, and you can place it anywhere that you want. So now you have a map. So one thing also is that you want to put a grid. So when you are publishing a paper or publishing a map, you have the exact coordinates or the coordinate system that other researchers or other students can follow, so to make sure that your maps are accurate. So you click on the map, the actual map, and you scroll down in item properties, and you select the grid option. So drop down the box and click on the plus, adding a new grid, and now you have grid number 1. You click on grid number 1 and you modify grid, and now it's going to ask you for the properties of your the grid that you want to put into the map. So it should be solid. The map interval is in the map units, the X and Y, so it means the intervals of your grid that you'll be using. So since this is a very small map, we can actually experiment a little bit. So we can add 0.1 on the X and maybe 0.1 on the Y. Nope, that's not it. So we add another. Okay. So the reason that the grids didn't show up was the CRS. So you have to make sure that the CRS matches with your project or with the map that you want to be working on. So in this case, we are working with CRS of 3857. So you want it to match this one here. Still not showing. So maybe we can change the CRS or the coordinate reference system in the main one. So we can choose the 4326 and apply. And we move on here. So we change it also 4326. Okay, let's just add a new map. There we go. So we added a map. We want to move it behind. So send to back. There we go. We want to redo the scale. There we go. just resize this a little bit. Okay. There. We're back again. So going back. So the grid. Add a grid. Modify. 0.1. 0.1. So we can add more decimal places to make sure that the grid is of a higher resolution. Or now we have a grid. So the problem with having a solid grid type is that there will be lots of lines floating around in your map, and it might make your map difficult to read, especially for print. So what I choose usually is either I choose this, the frames and annotations only, that will be editing further, or having a still a solid grid mark here, but changing the line style. So with here, line style, click on the line, and you change the opacity. So at maybe 40, let's make it 40 flat, 40% transparency. There. So that is another option that you can explore. So, but if you want just the frames and annotation with the little ticks outside of the map, so we can do it this way. So click on the grid again, modify. You change the grid type to frame and annotations only, and you scroll down to frame. So your frame style is, change the frame style to interior and exterior text, or exterior text, or interior text only. So I like to use the interior and exterior text. So now you have the text right on the margins or the frame of your map. Then edit this further. Let's scroll down, and you click the draw coordinates. So by clicking the draw coordinates, you actually have the coordinates, the longitude and latitude of the maps that you'll be making, or of the map that you are producing. So there. So if it looks a little bit too crowded, you can still edit the intervals here by changing the values. So 0.05, 0.05, there. So that looks a little bit more neater. So having a few ticks representing the longitude and the latitude would be simpler. So now the problem is the coordinates are overlapping or going beyond the workspace. So we can actually resize the entire map just a little bit to make sure that it fits there. And then centering everything again. So resize again. Centering there. And we move the elements to make sure that our map is neat and logical. Now, you can add the frame using this option here. I forgot. So there. So now this is pretty much your map that you'll be using. You can add more text as a label. You can add more shapes if you want. But this would suffice. So now to save it, you just go to layout and export as image. North, okay. I see. Wait. So we can add a new north since. There we go. So layout, export as image. Just choose close. Then PNG format is fine. So sample map. Uh, go back to the folder, documents. Mapping, sample maps. So sample map. So click save. Then it's going to ask you the resolution. So 300 dpi is okay, but you can, if you want a higher resolution map, you can change it to maybe 700 dpi, and it's going to be high res enough that you'll be able to see the fine details, especially if you're working with a very big map, let's say map of the Negros Oriental coast or Siquijor Island, or any large maps. So a higher DPI would be better. But if we're only working with a very small area like this, where the scale is only 1 to 200 or 1 to 100, 300, 500 would be okay. So you don't really have to overwork the software and your computer in order to produce high resolution maps. Then click on save. Just have to wait for a bit. Depends on the system. If you have a stronger or more powerful system, this will be finished quickly. But if you have a low end to mid-range system, this might take some time. Okay. Now let's look for the map. So mapping, sample maps, there. So the PNG file, and now we have a high resolution map. See, still clear even if you zoom it in. Now you have a high resolution map, and now it's ready to be put into your research proposal or your thesis or any publication that you might need. So that's it. If you have any more questions regarding with QGIS, don't hesitate to contact me. And there's a ton of material available online and on YouTube for tutorials for advanced users, or if you want to do something crazy with QGIS, there's a lot of tutorials available. Okay, that's it, and thank you.